most of us live in an environment and culture that's not really conducive to stillness or spaciousness. It's not really conducive to just being. Arguably, most of us who go online are living in a fierce modern machine of attention media designed to get us to neglect our downtime, to forget what it's like to have stillness, and to consume more media. Additionally, many of us are unaware that some lifestyle choices we might be making impact our ability to maintain concentration. And to add to these challenges, we work, we study, we live in physical environments that might not be optimized for focus. And so thinking about these things, I applied for sabbatical over a year ago, and last fall I was granted a sabbatical on the topics of concentration, distraction, and our ability to focus. I looked at how personal digital technology, right? I looked at how personal digital technology affects our ability to focus. I went to academic settings, about 14 libraries in September, and higher education learning spaces. I talked with students, administrators, librarians. In October, I met with architects, and I talked with architects about how they design space, how they create office spaces. Then in December, I went to some of those office spaces that those architects had designed. I talked with the employees to see how it worked for them. I did interviews with a lot of people in a lot of different settings, and I really feel blessed and thankful for KVCC to having this opportunity to do this. Also, I just journaled and watched about some of my own personal habits. I did some digital fasting and really jumped in deeply on a lot of these topics. Today's topic is about online reading. I'm not a reading expert. If you talk with our TRS or our foundation's instructors, you'll know that they have a lot more experience with that. Talking with them, I realize there's a lot more I don't understand about the whole picture of reading. So I'm just focusing on concentration, distraction, and reading in the online world. So our attention is what is what media companies want. And when I talk about media, traditionally we used to talk about television and radio, right? That's what media was. But now everyone's online and connecting to us in different ways. And so when I talk about media, I'm talking about social media. I'm talking about Facebook and Instagram. And if you're still on Friendster or MySpace, you might be connecting that way, or CSNBC or NBC or Netflix or whatever. These companies need to connect with us. And the New York Times, MLive, YouTube, Facebook, they would not exist without our eyeballs, right? They need our attention because they're selling product to us, but also they need our attention because they're selling advertisements to us, and they want to know who we are, what our likes are, what our demographics are, so they can sell that information also to their advertisers. So I encourage you to consider this. What if the idea is not that we're using media, right? I'm not using MLive, I'm not using New York Times, I'm not using Instagram. Think about what if technology is using us, right? And how does that make us think about how we're engaging with the online world? And how is really starving and hungry media, how is this delivered through our technology, right? How is this impacting our attention? Because they need our eyeballs, and they're multi-million-dollar companies who really want to attract us and keep us engaged in some way. And so that's a very powerful force with great marketing to keep us engaged and on our technology, phones, apps, computers. So it's a challenging world to stay focused and to keep our attention online. And 2,000 years ago, there was a scholar who was thinking about this very topic. Socrates complained about the memory-destroying properties of a newfangled technology, and that newfangled technology was called writing, okay? So it was a widespread thing, and Socrates was very concerned about this because Aristotle talked about ideas, and Aristotle's logic and rhetoric. Plato came in after that, and they talked about what's the nature of reality. And then when Socrates came in, he had a lot of this, his whole method was the Socratic method, right? Is having a dialogue, and that we need to know in our heads really well, deeply integrate into us so that we can speak confidently through it. And his lasting legacies, right? The Socratic method, the discussion of ideas. He was very concerned about writing because he thought that writing would be like an external hard drive and that we wouldn't have to remember, right? We wouldn't have to rely so much on memory if we had things written down. And the reason why we know Socrates said this is because someone wrote it down for us, right? And so that's kind of the nature, right? Yeah, a couple of you were anticipating that already. So his students did write this down. So there's value in the written word. There's value in long-term storage. But the idea of memory, concentration, distraction has been thought about for a long time. I was reading an article on the New York Times a little while ago. It was very engrossing, it was compelling, and as I got to the end of the article, I was ripe for a moment of contemplation and consideration. A pop-up ad came up and said, you know, read this next, and it disrupted my pause. This is not news to any of you who have read online, but it's the example of the nature of how news providers seek to keep us engaged, and that challenges contemplation. I just read this satisfying article, and it was inside the New York Times. It was not an advertisement for refinancing my mortgage, for whatever. It was just, read this next, and I wasn't quite ready for it. So this is the nature of the online world. That said, some news sources aim to support effective online reading. The Christian Science Monitor was an early adopter of offering readers a choice between quick read and deep read lengths. And they also had like a reading time estimate associated with it. And some other innovative websites have also created widgets so that you can kind of understand how far you are into a document. I'll bring, let's bring this up right here. And this is one of my new challenges of making sure that I'm doing this the way I want to do it. Okay. So let's see if I have the Christian Science Monitor article still up here. There we go. Okay. So hopefully you're seeing this Christian Science Monitor article. And so what they do here, I'm going to scroll down on it, and you can see two ways to read the story. Okay on this? You can see the screen, my screen here. Okay. Two ways to read the story: the quick read or the deep read, right? So quick read brings it up here. Not even one page. That's a really quick read. If you want to do the deep read, 9 minutes. So that's an example. See, we're giving the reader some understanding of how long it is. We're giving the reader some ability to choose, hey, I want a quick read on this or a deep read on it. So we can kind of get mentally set for how we want to do this. All right. Several publications are doing this. Bring my notes back up here. And that's just a way to help you kind of understand where you are. There's also a great trend with browsers. And so if you're using Safari or Firefox or Chrome or Microsoft Edge, not that I expect any of you are using that, but if you are, there are reader-friendly viewing modes that reformat the text and hide advertisements. Who just do a quick show of hands? Who's already seen this? Has ever seen a reader view? I'm going to show you in a minute. Reader view on some browsers. A couple of you have, a couple of you haven't. Okay. This is number one, top tip from Jim. This is a pro tip from you. This will be a benefit for you when you're reading online. And so.
Looks like Kim has her hand raised.
Yeah. Kim,
No,
you
said quick show of hands, so I showed you my hand.
Yeah.
My bad.
Yep, that's good. Thanks. We're all figuring out how to do this. Okay. So here we go. This is the original version here from The Atlantic. Capitalism's Favorite Drug. It shows some images. It has more story recommendations on the right-hand side there. It has a Xfinity advertisement on my page that has an advertisement here for this, advertisements all throughout. But if I want to, right here in Firefox, there's a little option right here. Look at this, reader-friendly view, okay? We can clean that up. That is that's a huge benefit for us to read clean text. Not only that, look at this. We can change some options here. Nighttime, I want dark view. I want a bright view. Personally, I like the sepia. That works well for me. If I want to, I can make the text larger. As my eyes get older, I definitely need that. I can go for sans serif or serif font. If I want to have different style of font that works better for me, I can do that. And there's some other options as well. So that #1 pro tip on how to improve reading is to look for the reader view option. Safari on the Mac always has it. And for Chrome, it's an extension. Just do a Google search. Actually, on my webpage, you're gonna see in just a minute, I'll have some tips for how to find that. All right. Okay, questions, reactions from anyone, either in the chat or you can come across vocally here if you want to. Okay, great. Nancy Pearl is an author, a reading advocate, a superhero librarian. Literally, they made a little figurine of her of a superhero as a librarian. And she researches the relationship between reading and mindset. And in a presentation at the Michigan Library Association conference I was at several years ago, Pearl said that 80% of liking a book is about our current mood and mindset. Right, and so sometimes we feel like we're distracted. We can't read like we used to. But she says that really mindset has a lot to do with it. Similar statements could be made about learning and doing. Right, motivations for reading difficult content vary based on the individual. Some need the time pressure of a deadline. I certainly sometimes need the time pressure of a deadline to force me to focus. That really gets us focused. Some prefer just a large chunk of time. Some people want to be in a specific place. Maybe they have an office or a favorite reading place, or they want to spread all this stuff out on a large table. There's a lot of things about motivations and setting that help us read and be successful with focus. But looking at the ancient, so I talked about Socrates earlier, but I'm talking about the ancient Stoics right now. And so a key component for successful reading, even successful living from the Stoics, is I am at my best when I'm doing this one thing only. And on the online multitasking world, sometimes we're feeling really torn by that. And so looking through the lens of anthropology and psychology, reading is not an innate human ability like communicating verbally. Reading is a learned skill, and if we get out of the habit of concentrated reading, or reading practice, or even never really learned concentrated reading, then it's a skill that we lose. And so I'm going to bring a video up here of Marianne Wolf. Marianne Wolf wrote a book called Proust and the Squid, and she talks about the history of reading. And it's fascinating to think about this, is that we take it for granted, but it's a learned behavior that's not a natural innate ability, okay? So I'm gonna do a little screen share here. I'm gonna bring her video up. And it's about 2 minutes. Here we go.
It's so fundamental to life that it's really hard to imagine not being able to read. But 5,000 years ago, nobody had any idea what writing was, much less
Oh, here comes an advertisement. Okay.
a bulletin board or reading road signs. And of course, we use reading and writing for learning. I'm here at Tufts University in Medford, Massachusetts to talk to Dr. Marianne Wolf about reading and learning and about how we're able to do it all. So you study reading, and reading's a new thing. It's, what, 5,000 years old?
Absolutely. It is a blink in the evolutionary clock.
And it is something that we don't have the circuitry to do, right? It's just something that we figured out not that long ago.
One of the most amazing things when I started studying this was the realization that our human brain was never born to read. We don't have a single structure. We don't have a single gene. Rather, reading is something that it reflects our brain's capacity to do something new.
So can you tell me how that happened historically, and then how that happens maybe when you're a kid?
Yes, this is a fundamental insight. If the brain was never born to read, that means it has to form this whole circuit anew with every child that's ever born on the earth. What's so interesting about the reading brain is that it's an absolute example of how much we use our brain, not how little. When we first decode, the eye sends all its information to the visual areas of both hemispheres.
So this is the back here.
Yeah, the back here. And these visual areas go quickly across, get connected here, and then the real fun part. You are connecting areas here that have to do with the sounds of the words. All the meanings of the word are activated at the same time. All getting hooked up here, and also all this area here in the frontal lobe is connecting some of the tiny sounds called phonemes to the rest. So within 300 milliseconds, all of this brain is being used somewhere around 3,500, 3,000 BC.
Okay. So, any reactions to that, either in the chat or anyone have a reaction about the idea of this learned behavior bringing out an innate ability or skill?
Growing up, I had a really hard time learning how to read. I was in like learning disabled classes like all the way through elementary school in order to get caught up on reading, and it just makes me feel a lot better to know that reading is a generally new thing that people are doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Audrey, for sharing that. Anyone else have something they want to share or talk about? One person had a hard time understanding through the audio that came through there. And so, Audrey, do you want to repeat one more time?
Can y'all hear me? Put a thumbs up if you can hear me. Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, I said I feel so all throughout elementary school, I had a really hard time learning how to read. I was in learning disabled like classes all through elementary school, and it makes me feel a lot better to know that reading is only a couple thousand years old.
Yeah, thanks for reconfirming that. So depending on if you look at historical humans, about between 30,000 years ago and 70,000 years ago is when the modern human with our current abilities came into being. And so if we think about the modern human being 30,000 years old or 70,000 years old, and we think about reading as being really a blip in that period, it gives us a little bit different perspective on where we've come with reading. So this is a complex issue, and there's likely more going on than we realize about reading. Research has shown that the internet functions as sort of externalized memory. I mentioned that about Socrates earlier, but when people expect to have future access to information, they have lower rates of recall of the information itself, okay? So reading has a variety of purposes and styles. Much internet media reading is reading as consumption, right? So where we read to be momentarily entertained, to quickly acquire information, to look up a phone number, an address, maybe a trivia fact if we want to. And with online reading, we can also fall into a pattern of behavior such as clicking on news headlines or just scrolling through Twitter feeds quickly or reflexively, right? So or reactively, which is different than responding intentionally, right? We can do this impulsively or unintentionally. And so our interest in online reading can also be the allure of the momentary giggle, the dopamine hit that the fun website gives us to it, the personal status update from a friend is a reason why we're interested and attracted to online media. But it's not actually about, those activities not about learning and retaining information and not really reading in the deeper sense. So there can be a false feeling of fluency with information because information is flowing in and we're understanding the words, and it seems like it's smoothly like collating into some binder in the back of our head slotted into our memory and memory shells of our brains, but knowledge doesn't always stick unless we put effort into learning. And so it takes concentration, and here's the key, especially for us in education, is active use of study strategies to improve our retention. And when we get in the habit of using our personal digital technology for reading, for fun little things, and for brief information bits, it's a different experience than studying and using strategies for retention, okay? According to Naomi Barron, a professor of linguistics at American University and the author of Words on the Screen, it's a great book, it's talk about fate of reading in the digital world. She says that most research shows that readers concentrate and learn best from print resources. And I'm not a Luddite, I'm not, from a librarian's point of view, I'm not saying it has to be this way, that we're only reading from print books, but as of about 2016, which is about as current as they have, well, 2016 was the best studies that I'd seen. People learn better from print material. She also warns that while the trend towards ebooks makes economic sense, and right now in the situation we're in, it's the only option that students have, but ebooks may rob students in the long run. Students are more likely to be distracted when they're reading an ebook downloaded on the same devices that has their Instagram, their Snapchat, their push notifications coming in. And so it's so challenging when I get to reading difficult content that takes grit, determination, that takes some fortitude, and I'm reading it on the same device that provides me all of my fun things that I want to do. It's so hard for me not to jump ship on my internet connected device, my laptop, whatever it is, and go for something that's fun, because that's kind of the nature of the media that's pushing it to us. And so it's extremely difficult for students to get through difficult content when you have the whole world of fun connected to your reading device. And so a question came up from Amali. Did the study include audiobooks, or was it only about reading text? And this was about reading text. And that's a great question, because there are different kinds of readers. And some students who are reading fiction have found that they love having the audiobook version of it in their ears while they're reading the novel at the same time. My nephew, it was a breakthrough for him in college when he had an English class and he was suffering through it. He plugged it into his ears and he did it reading at the same time. That combination was like what the ancient Stoics say. We're doing one thing at one time and we're staying connected with that. I have some links, Molly and others in the website. So let's just take a pause. From things from your past or from topics I've brought up here during the session, what do you wonder about? What are your questions about online reading? Go ahead and put it in the chat, or you can share it with everyone here on the audio. Or personal observations. Not everyone all at once. Here we go. Okay, here's a chat. Oh yeah, Morgan, Megan talked about, she does that with it. It's very helpful. So yeah, people who love reading novels, but they've been kind of disconnected from it. And part of this mood, Nancy Pearl, what I love about Nancy Pearl also is that she gives guidelines. People say, how long do I have to read a book before I give up on it if I'm not connected with it? So here's a pro tip from a superhero librarian. She says, take the number 100, subtract your age. So if you're 30, that puts you at 70. And after 70 pages into a book, you're just not into it, you can give it up. If you're 90 years old and you're 10 pages into a book and you're not into it, you can give it up. Okay, so that's her method for online reading. But also, what we can do is we can tune into our mindset and setting. I read a long form article a couple nights ago. I was practicing different browser screen readers, and I read a long form article, and for 3 days, I was trying to get the time to sit down and do this, and it just wasn't happening till it was on Wednesday night, like at 9 o'clock at night, and I'm like, I'm sitting down, I'm doing this, I was in the mood, and it was just the right time. Even something that I really wanted to read only something that was just, a half an hour read or so. The mood, mindset, I was there, I was doing that one thing, and it was such a satisfying read. Okay, so a couple questions here in the chat. A question about, have you experienced interactive PDF readers? Yeah, and so you want to talk a little bit more about that? I've seen them. Sometimes it allows you to mark up text. You can do highlighting and things like that. Is that what you're talking about? Yes, okay. Yeah, so like online textbooks, it allows you to do the equivalent of like highlighting, circling, making annotations, things of that nature in it. Imagine like when we're in a Word document, sometimes if you've done the editing in a Word document or a Google Doc, there's kind of like a little sideline there you can mark up a document. As a matter of fact, there's even I figure it's Firefox or Chrome extension that kind of allows you to kind of mark up web pages. It's not a live web page, but there's some options there to help you read that. So yeah, thanks for that. Oh, yeah. Kathy mentioned she's physically exhausted when reading online or digitally. I suspect it's sensory, just observation. So 2005, Ohio State University did a study on this. And I'll keep it brief, but it's really interesting. 2005 would have been the era of CRT, not LCD. So we're on the LCD screens, right? CRT was the old style of screens. And so they were studying students, and they had a student read a Time magazine article on a CRT screen. And they had another group of students read a Time magazine article from the actual publication of Time magazine, and they read them for comprehension. And the ones who read from the actual Time magazine, the actual print one, had scored higher on retention of the information. And the research was not about why, they just want to know if there was a difference. And so then further research brought it up, and further research looked at it, and the reasons why are kind of complicated. But here I am for my monitor. So right now I'm about 28 inches, I would say, away from my monitor. And my eye tracking across the screen is harder if I have Time magazine about 12 inches from me. My eyes have to travel farther. That's one concept. Another one is that a CRT screen did not have the high resolution that modern screens do, or that the print paper did. Another one is that we're not habitually used to that. Another one is a CRT screen might have 9 inches across of text, where the Time magazine article had columns of about 3 inches. Easy for us to wrap around to the next page. But also, here's a cool thing. Other researchers found that here I'm reading in Time magazine, I'm reading in the introduction. Here's column 2, here's column 3. Oh, column 4, oh, this relates to column 1 and something in column 2 over here. And so there's a physical understanding of where I am in this physical object, that when I'm scrolling through an endlessly long page, I get lost on where I am on the screen. And it's a little bit harder to say, oh yes, this idea related to this idea, and I can quickly go back and forth to say, oh yeah, here it is on the screen. So there's something to that. It's more complicated than that, but there's something to that. Okay, so a couple comments here on the chat. Yeah, Tom Bowers, yeah, agrees with Kathy. Even tried a Kindle, holding it was annoying, uncomfortable compared to a book. The book is like the umbrella. The umbrella is probably at almost at its pinnacle of design. You know, it's old style, or a spoon or a fork, super old style, but it has probably reached about its pinnacle of design. The book is super old school. It's pretty much reached its pinnacle of design and concept. It's been worked for years and years for how to make it work well. And so Megan also says, I'm reading with standard printed materials, normally print material article. Yeah, people like to print off articles, mark them up when they want to get focused on them, right? And Jamie says, could screen reading stress be a generational issue? Could children raised reading screens feel less exhausted by it? Yes, so that is a great question. And the challenge is that children who brought up reading on screens also are having a different experience of an internet connected device being behind their screen. And so there's something different there. But when people have print resources and they're in the mood for it and can do nothing else, they can't click on a button to go check the weather, to go check Twitter, to go check Facebook, those temptations to pull us away are less. That's what's really clear in the literature. Okay, thanks for the comments there. This is really great. Some questions come up about multitasking sometimes. And so the brain processes different types of information in a variety of channels, right? We have a language channel. We have an audio channel. So I'm watching for saber-toothed tigers out on the tundra, or I'm looking for perhaps I have loved ones that I'm taking care of, you know? I'm always connected with that. That's a really innate early human ability. And then, so language channel, visual channel, audio channel. And so we can only process one stream of information, our brains at one at a time. They can switch very quickly between them. And you can overburden a channel. When you overburden a channel, then the brain becomes inefficient and mistake prone. And so what other channels, Kathy, you and I have talked about this, what other channels are going on in our minds about our mental mindset, our physical discomfort, our body energy levels, our time constraints right now? So I'm standing and I forgot to put my slippers on this morning so my feet are cold. That's an input that I'm having right now as I'm interacting with you. And so that's not really multitasking, but that's an input that's going on. And so when we think about multitasking, our brain is dealing with a lot of things in a complicated way. And when we're getting in to concentrate on difficult content, it makes it a challenge for our brain to switch between gears. I use an analogy. Let's say we're driving to South Haven. Okay, it's a beautiful summer day in June or July, and we're in a new convertible. We got the top down. We're driving fast. We got our favorite radio station on. It's cranking out the music, and we realize that we're going to Van Buren State Park, and we just missed that turn on 43, right? Think about it. What happens when you're driving and you need to get focused? What are some things that happen? Think about this. We take our foot off the gas, right? So what's happening is that we're reducing visual input, right? Oh, we turn down the radio, right? We're reducing audio input. Our adrenaline kicks in, right? That gives us mental focus. And so what happens is when we get to a critical time or critical interactions, boom, we get focused in, locked in on what needs to be figured out. And so a similar thing could be talked about with multitasking. If I just kept on driving fast with the wind in my hair and what little I have left, and with the music going, I cannot bring all that input in and handle it, right? And so the same thing goes with multitasking. We gotta keep that, we gotta tighten that up and get that under control to be able to focus. Okay. Also, there's some other things going on, and this is slightly, let's see here. I'm gonna skip that. I'm gonna skip that one. Because we're right on, actually we have so many of us on here, we're right on time, and I want to give opportunities to chat at the end. Let me do a little catch up on the chat here. Yeah, turn the radio off. Yeah, gotta turn the radio off, get that volume right, get that under control. The same thing can be said if we're reading online and we're on our tablet. What if we put it in airplane mode? What if we put it in do not disturb? What if we turned off those notifications? If we really need to get into content, what if the idea is we're at work and we have our laptop or in our offices, if that happens again, and we're on our desktop and we need to concentrate on something? What we do is we need to close out Zimbra. We close out Slack. We close out unnecessary tabs, unnecessary browsers. We have a spreadsheet in the back we need to work on, but we don't need to do that while we're studying, while we're reading this. Close it out, okay? Turn off those notifications. Turn the phone off. If you can possibly do that, put it on do not disturb mode. There's some ways that help us stay focused, all right? So here we go. We're gonna do an activity now. You're gonna have two opportunities, two options, I mean, to say this. And so this is where we're gonna either do writing or you're gonna go view, you're gonna go view a website. And so I'm going to put the website into the chat here in just a minute. So that way you can click on it and you can bring it up on your own device and if for some reason you're not able to click on HTML in the chat, I can help you get to it from the library website, KBC's library website. It's under LibGuides, which is short for library guides, which are websites that we've created. And I created a whole website all about my sabbatical. And under library, LibGuides, it's under concentration, distraction, and focus. That's the LibGuide I've created. I'm going to send you a link in just a minute, because here's what the activity is going to be. And you can choose to do this. You can choose to do this however you want. The first option is with your pen and paper and pencil, whatever you have there. At the top of the page, you can choose to write reading online. And then when I say go in a minute, for 5 minutes, you're going to do a free association writing. Whatever words, phrases, ideas, full sentences, complete sentences, you can draw doodles. For 5 minutes, you're just going to knock out. If the goal is just to keep going for 5 minutes. And this is a self-exploration. We're not going to ask you to share this with anyone, but this writing activity is really valuable for some people. For those who don't want to do that or can't do that in their current situation, you're going to go right here to this website that I put in the chat. So this is the direct link to the LibGuide. And so for 5 minutes, from about 9:45 to 9:50, you're going to do one of these two tasks. I'm going to step away from my monitor, do your thing, and I'll check back with you in 5 minutes. Okay, in the last minute of our exercise here, we'll go ahead and get together and, pretty soon. So finish up your writing or finish up your exploring that website, and we'll get back together here as a group. All right, that's 5 minutes. Thanks for exploring that. Who would like to share something? They can either share something that they found on the website. If they want to share it with the group, you can do it in the chat, or you can do it verbally here. Something you came across you thought was interesting, or if someone wants to share about their writing, they can talk about the experience of that or something that occurred to them. Go ahead, anyone, if you want.
So I realized, so I started writing and I was doing my writing and then I got distracted and clicked the link in the chat.
Okay, yeah. And Megan shared, she shared one of the articles about reading is the new deep learning in the chat as well. Anyone else have something they want to share with the group? Yeah, talking about our learnings, our reading skills in the chat. Okay, so yeah, someone, yeah, this one, I love the article from Medium, yeah. Okay, I have about 3 more things here to do in the last 10 minutes. And so we're right on time. If you want to hang on to ask questions or connect with me at the end afterwards, you can do that. But also, I'm going to invite you to send me a Zimbra email or a Zimbra meeting request for next week if you want to have a half-hour or so conversation or follow up next week, because we're all working from home. It's this new world. So let's talk about some tips for improving our reading online. So here are the recommendations I make for you. Number one tip is to check your browser settings and choose ones that optimize screen reading. I posted a list of reader-friendly modes for your web browser on the LibGuide, on that link that I said, that it's on there, I think in the middle of the first page. So number one, write that down. Top tip is to look, even on your phone. I have an iPhone and Safari. There's a reader mode, just like in on my browser. Number one top tip. Number two top tip about reading online is choose one browser for work, perhaps Firefox. Now that we're at home working all the time, right? Choose another one for personal surfing, like Chrome or Safari or Edge if you want. Or perhaps if you're interested in incognito or anonymous browsing, so you don't get all those annoying pop-ups, or if you're interested in personal online security, then consider using Brave, especially on smartphones. And you can use the search engine DuckDuckGo. DuckDuckGo is a search engine that puts less cookies and less, it lets you travel online incognito. So, so here on my personal laptop, I use Safari for my personal web browsing. I have Chrome for work, and then I use Firefox today to preload these pages I wanted to share with you. So that's a tip to help us with some online screen experiences. So right now, oh, we're right on time. Great. So why would you recommend us to use multiple browsers? And so an idea is, if I am using a browser for work and I have Zimbra up and Slack and KVCC website, and I'm in my Valley, and also I have my personal email and my Facebook open and my whatever I'm doing with it online, the temptation to be pulled away is there. The temptation for push notifications come through, which actually push notifications, that's a tricky word because the idea is that they're pushing notifications out to you, but what's really doing is they're trying to pull you in, right? That should be called luring back in notifications, not push notifications. And so if you want to have less going on, like that driving to South Haven in the convertible, less inputs, less multitasking, we can split our time and energy between different browsers for different activities. That way, when I'm in this browser doing this activity, I'm doing this one thing and not also bring my personal life into it. Okay, so here's what I want you to do. You don't have to share this with anyone, but I want you to develop a personal goal or an intention about your future online reading experience, right? If you want to share it, you can, but put something on, even in the roughest form, about what you want to do with your future online experience or plans, and just put that down there for a little self-improvement for in the future. Take about 30 more seconds here to contemplate that idea and make yourself a note. If someone feels compelled to share that, they can do it over the audio or can do it in the chat. I'll give you a moment here right now if you want to share your intention or your objective or goal. If not, okay, we'll move into the close then. So this is about KVCC. It's about our work, but it's also about supporting our students. And we have many students whose daily online reading experience is more about, in my opinion, this is subjective, but it could be more about media consumption and entertainment than about deep learning. And when students depend on having future access to information, they tend to have lower rates of recall of the information itself. And engaging with text and reading for comprehension takes concentration and active use of study strategies that are different from our habitualized online reading behaviors. I feel pretty solid about that. And so let's think about that when we're supporting students, even if I'm in the business office and I need to support students with our online content, how does that reading experience, how do our websites for our how to do things at KVCC impact students? If I'm delivering educational content, what's that experience like for students? So just think about that as we consider implications for KVCC. Okay, let's see if there's any comments. Oh, great, some people, so we did have one person add here. But with their intent or goal, before I start reading, decide if I'm reading to comprehend, to simply consume, or learn, and then act accordingly. Thanks for sharing that, for Molly. Yeah. Okay, so here is the closing. Oh, right on time. Great. Here's the closing for what we have here. Number one, you have an open invitation to send me an email right after this, later this week, and I'd be happy to talk with you one-on-one, or I could do a Zoom with your department, your unit, or your group, and we could talk about this topic. Open invitation, contact me through Zimbra, all right? Yes, after this, here's your assignment. If you didn't do the writing assignment and you want to do that, then the writing prompt, once again, was online reading or reading online. And you can just do a little 5-minute exercise. Look at the clock and just do a free verse writing, see what happens, what comes out. The other assignment I have for you to do after this session, go to that link, right? Let's see if I can still paste it in here again. Yep, I pasted that link in there. Go to that website. You can explore the one on reading. There are several other topics for my 5 other presentations coming up on that website. I'm still optimizing that website for the other topics, but the reading online one is done. In the future, please consider signing up for the other Zoom sessions I'm going to offer. I have some great ones coming up. They're all different. Some of it is about health and wellness. Some is about smartphone and social media. Some is about office settings and study spaces. So I have a lot of great content coming up. So thanks for your time this morning. I welcome your feedback in the chat. I welcome your feedback via Zimbra. And right now, I'm closing out here. Put in the chat, or you can talk through any ahas or anything that you want to say here at the close. Go ahead and do it over the Zoom if you want. Yep, thanks for a lot of people in the chat for saying thanks. Thanks for doing this new way of meetings. I'll stay on the line here for another minute here if someone wants to connect with me. Otherwise, thanks for attending today. I appreciate it. Have a good Friday. Yep, namaste.